Okay, shall we start the meeting?
Sir.
Just hold on. I'll give a little intro and then we'll start. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this teaching session of the combined Sagar and Aster hospitals. It's nice to have one of our students from Aster, Vanitha Madan, talking to us about the introduction to CT scan. The idea is not to tell you how to read a scan in a CT scan in detail. Maybe she'll touch upon certain basics of that. But the idea is for us to learn about what are the fundamental principles which are going into the design and use of a CT scan. Over to you, Vanitha.
Thank you, sir. So good evening, respected teachers, seniors, my dear colleagues and friends. I welcome you all for today's subject seminar, that is Introduction to CT Scan. As we all know that CT scan is an abbreviation for computerized axial tomography, which was previously called as computer assisted tomography and which later on changed to computed tomography. It is a non-invasive diagnostic imaging modality which has gained popularity nowadays. And today's plan for the talk goes like this. I will start with history. I will talk about basic principles, developments, and some information about contrast agents. And I'll be talking about features of CT, and I'll be ending my talk with clinical applications and interpretation of certain basic CTs. And that term tomography has been derived from a Greek word, tomos and graphy. Tomos means to slice and graphy means to write. The first commercial CT scanner was invented by Sir Godfrey Hounsfield in 1972, who is a British engineer when he was working in EMI Central Research Laboratories in Hayes, UK. Hence, it was called as EMI scanner, and the picture besides shows the EMI scanner, which was limited to scan only the brain. And Sir MacLeod Cormack is a professor in physiology who did a research in mathematical calculations, which has helped for the development of a first commercial CT scanner. And both these gentlemen has shared Nobel Prize in the Department of Physiology or Medicine in 1979 for their contributions to the development of CT machine. And in the first picture is the gentleman, Mr. Alan M. Cormack, and in second picture is Sir Godfrey Hounsfield. And as I mentioned earlier, CT scan is a non-invasive diagnostic imaging modality which involves the process of generating 2D cross-sectional images in slices or otherwise called as sections with the help of X-rays that will be passed around a 3D object in an axis of rotations from a X-ray source to the from an X-ray source, and the penetrated X-rays will be collected by the detectors, will be converted into an electrical impulses and will be sent to a computer for further processing and the production of an image. So digital geometry processing is the process which is used to produce 3D images from the 2D cross-sectional imaging. What is meant by digital geometry processing? In other words, or in simple words, we have to collect multiple images of the same area which we are seeing in multiple by passing X-rays in multiple angles and putting on together all the data. We can produce a 3D images from those 2D cross-sectional images. And this image shows the parts of a CT mission, which includes the gantry or scanner system, which is a large box-like mission with a hole in the middle. And the gantry will be containing all the X-ray sources, detectors, and other machineries. And there is a patient table for the positioning of patient. And it includes a computer for further processing of the electrical impulses that used to be collected from detectors. And parts of gantry comprises of X-ray tubes, which is the source of radiation for a CT scan, which is a monochromatic X-ray beam. That is, it contains photons of single wavelength, so that our image reconstruction will be simpler and accurate. And the X-ray, and there will be filters in the gantry, which helps in removing low energy photons, thereby increasing the mean energy of radiation. And there are machinery like collimators that will be fixed on both sides of X-ray tubes and detectors, which helps in controlling the scatter radiation and also regulates the thickness of the slices. And there are detectors which converts the radiated beam into the electrical impulses, and the electrical impulses will be passed on to the computer for further processing. There are two types of detectors, like scintillation detectors, which uses a heavy metal illuminating materials like sodium iodide or cesium iodide, etc., which is obscured nowadays. So what we are using in nowadays CT scan missions is gas-filled detectors, which uses inert gas like xenon-filled gas chambers. And this image shows the position of X-ray tubes, which is indicated by a green arrow and mentioned by T, and the path of X-ray beam, which is indicated by red arrows by X, and the position of detectors by D. And what is a Hounsfield unit? Hounsfield unit is a measure of linear attenuation of the X-rays that we will pass through an object. So in simpler terms, it can be said as a measurement of density of structures based on the amount of X-ray beam observed. So it measures the density of different structures based on how much X-rays will be absorbed by which tissues. So Hounsfield has depicted this table for mentioning Hounsfield units. He has taken water as a reference point, giving as 0 Hounsfield units, and air and fat has been given as a negative Hounsfield units, which will appear darker in CT scans and are otherwise termed as hypodense structures. And he has devised positive Hounsfield units for muscle or soft tissue and contrast and a bone, which will appear whitish in the CT scans, which are otherwise called as hyperdense structures. So there are almost 7 generations of CT scans till now, which differ in the mode of data acquisition, and as well as the position of detectors or number of detectors, and the based on the movement of the patient couch, whether it is moving continuously or we have to do it manually after each rotation of the gantry, and based on the path of X-ray. Initially, the path of X-ray beam was used to be pencil beam. Later on, changed to fan beam X-ray, fan beam path, and based on up to 3rd generations of CTs, it used to be conventional. It has said to be conventional because those conventional CT scanners used to scan the patient one slice at a time, and every time after each rotation of the gantry, we have to progress the patient's couch forward for each rotation of gantry, which is a very time consuming procedure, and it will be inconvenient for the patient to hold breaths multiple times. So this notion has led to the development of further inventions like a CT scan, where the X-ray tubes and the detectors and multiple detectors used to be placed in a gantry, and the gantry used to rotate continuously, as well as the patient's couch also will move forward continuously, so that the X-ray beam will take a path of helix or otherwise spiral around the patient, so that there won't be any glitches in between the imaging process, so that we can reduce the process of CT scan as time consumption for a CT scan, and patient's inconvenience also. So after multi-detector scan, has a multiple number of detectors, which has evolved in number. Like initially it used to be 4, then 16, then 32, and now 64 slices. The 64 rows of detectors has been arranged so that a CT scan can read a maximum of 64 slices in per gantry rotation. So it has further improved the spatial and temporal resolution of a CT scan. And the multi-detector CT, in addition with various software improvements in the system software, various improvements in the system software and computer mechanisms, has led to the development of virtual reality imaging and 3D CT scans. So its use has been seen nowadays in CT angiography, fluoroscopy, and virtual endoscopy procedures. Dual energy CT scan is a procedure where we use two X-ray tubes, that is two sources of X-rays, along with multiple detector CT, where a patient will be exposed at a time to two different energy sources, and the tissue densities between the energy and the CT scan imaging will be done based on the differences in the energy related attenuation coefficients.
All right, Vanitha, there's a question.
Yes,
what is axial imaging?
Sir, axial imaging is, it will be, the slices will be taken in a transverse section, sir, where the patient will be placed longitudinally.
Yeah. So the image capture is axial.
Axial, sir.
And a related question from Ravi Shankar again, what is the 128 and 256 slice CT? I think you have answered it.
Yes,
that
sir.
It is a number of slices that you capture in one rotation of the gantry.
Yes, sir. That okay. I have stopped with 64, but later on,
but there are other ones also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But tell me, you described these, what shall I say, advances in this imaging. Yes, what sir. Are they trying to achieve in the end? How is it helping the surgeon and the patient?
Sir, for the patient, one thing is time consumption will be less, sir. For a
time will be less, procedure. Number one, yes.
And we can avoid artifacts relating to breath holding, sir.
Very good, yes. There's one more important issue in time consumption. Again, one of them is breath holding. The other one, it is the movement through the gantry. Some people are very claustrophobic.
Yes, sir.
And just the movement in and out of the gantry will make them very anxious and nervous. So if the time is very short, people tend to take it better.
Yes, sir.
All right. How does it help the surgeon?
For detecting lesions accurately, sir.
Yeah.
Because it will improve resolution.
Yes. One of them is the resolution is better of the pictures. So the number of pixels, as it were, in the equivalent of a picture, digital picture, the pixels increase. Yes. Number two, slices are thinner.
Yes, sir.
And so smaller lesions are picked up. If you needed 1 centimeter lesion to pick up at an earlier stage, now it will be half a centimeter, even smaller. Okay, yes, that can be done. And the third advantage is what you have said. Yeah, what you have said in the third point. 3D reconstruction helps surgeons plan their operation better.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please continue.
Sir, in acute emergency setting, indications of CT are numerous. Here I have mentioned some of the major indications for CT scan, which from trauma to various soft tissue infections, which includes even cerebral vascular diseases as a part of acute abdomen workup, and for tumor staging workup or detection of tumors, and even in infectious and inflammatory diseases, and in coronary artery diseases like CT angiography.
Just one sec. There's another question from Ravi Shankar. What thickness of slices is needed for AWR? Ravi, can I ask you to answer that yourself, please?
I think, basically for the, normally you use 2 or 3 millimeters. For
Yeah.
AWR, I think you should use 1 millimeter thickness slices so that you get an accurate picture of the abdominal wall, the musculature, so that you can plan the reconstruction.
All right.
Dr.
Okay.
Shivram can correct me if I'm wrong.
I think correct, but should not make any great difference, Ravi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Continue.
just
Yeah. Go on, Shiva.
no. I just wanted to ask all of you, if it is 128 and all, is the irradiation becomes also less or it is same?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I think because the time of exposure is less, irradiation will be less. It is a very, very, very apt question, because one of the big problems with CT scanners is a high dose of radiation that the patient gets. And I think the shorter the time of exposure, lower will be the quantum of irradiation that one gets.
That's another advantage of
Correct.
higher.
Correct. Vanita, please continue.
Yes. And this table shows the indications of a IV contrast where we use extensively in CT pulmonary angiography and in detection of aortic aneurysms or ruptures or detections or dissections, and in trauma patients, as well as oral inflammatory disease, bowel diseases, and in patients with abdomen and pelvic abscesses, and to locate the site of bowel perforations. And where we don't use IV contrast is while we are doing a HRCT scan, high resolution CT scan, to see for infiltrative lung diseases. And if we want to see for a pneumothorax or pneumomediastinum, there is no need of IV contrast. And in a patients with known allergies to contrast or a patients with renal failure, we try to avoid IV contrast.
Why don't you need an IV contrast for pneumomediastinum or pneumothorax?
Sir, usually...
In fact, you have the answer in your subsequent slides. I'm giving you a hint.
Air is the contrast.
Negative contrast.
Air is a beautiful contrast, so you don't need to add anything more to it.
Yes.
Go on.
So, preparation of a patient in case of IV contrast, in case of administration of IV contrast, in history, we have to elicit whether patient has underwent any previous scans before, and whether if it is any associated adverse reactions to the contrast. And we have to ask for a history of hypothyroidism and the family history of adverse reactions, and a history of asthma or other allergies, and history of comorbidities like diabetes mellitus mainly, to see for diabetic nephropathy, and the history of previous pre-existing renal insufficiency, and whether the patient is a pregnant or a breastfeeding mother. And we have to advise the patient to remove all the jewels and metals that interferes with scan to avoid artifacts. And we have to advise the patient to be on nil per oral for at least 4 hours. An informed decision should be given about breastfeeding to the patient, and we have to counsel the patient that small amounts of contrast will be discharged in the breast milk, but there is no data stating that it is harmful for the baby. And if patient is okay for not to breastfeed for at least 24 hours, that will be preferred. And pre-medication is suggested in patients with previous contrast allergies, like prednisolone or methylprednisolone or hydrocortisone, along with diphenhydramine 50 mg IV, along with proper hydration of the patient. And we have to check the creatinine levels in a patient before undergoing contrast administration, at least within 30 days, within first at least 30 days, in patients with renal disease, HIV, diabetes, hypertension, and in elder patients with age greater than 60 years, and the patients who are undergoing chemotherapy. And in patients with elevated creatinine, we have to see for GFR. If the GFR is less than 30, then we have to take certain measures. It is better to avoid contrast. In case if it is essential, then we have to take certain measures like proper hydration, along with we have to administer N-acetylcysteine 600 mg BD at least 1 day prior to the CT administration of contrast and 1 day after. And in patients with renal failure, if it is always advisable to avoid the contrast procedure. However, it can be given, but it worsens the patient's renal dysfunction later on, requiring dialysis. And in pregnant patients, we have to counsel the patients before, because administration of iodine can cause neonatal hypothyroidism, and they have to check the neonatal thyroid function test within first week of life.
Yeah. Vanitha, would you do a CT in a pregnant person at all?
No, sir. But
where would you do it if you have to? Or where would you definitely avoid doing it?
Sir, in first trimester pregnancies, we have to avoid definitely, sir.
Yeah.
And in second trimester patients, we can do, sir.
If it's absolutely essential, but there are other methods of doing it. Can I bring in Prashant? Are you there? Or yeah, Prashant?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Yeah. Tell me, would you do a CT at all? If so, where would you do it?
So, sorry, sir, I didn't answer the question.
We're talking about doing CT scans in pregnant patients.
Okay,
when would you do it, if you do it at all?
So we'll do it after the first trimester, sir.
Okay. And even after the first trimester, would you like to avoid the abdomen, or would you go ahead and ask for it like you ask for anybody else?
If it is inevitable, we have to do. Otherwise, we'll try and avoid the imaging modalities in pregnant ladies.
I would say you would avoid doing the abdomen at all if it's possible, because there are other methods of imaging the abdomen today. But if you have to, for some reason, if you want to scan the head, for example, you can go ahead with it, because there are methods of protecting the abdomen when you're doing a head CT. Okay, that is what is generally recommended. Anything else to add, Ravi or Shivram?
No, I just wanted to tell pediatric CT scan she didn't cover, I think.
Right.
Usually it is done under general anesthesia.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. That's an important comment. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Vanitha. Go on.
Yes, sir. And radio contrast agents are the agents which we use to increase the tissue densities between. We use to increase the densities between two tissues. So they can be divided into positive contrast agents and negative contrast agents. Positive contrast agents means they will attenuate more X-rays than other body tissues because of their high atomic weights. And positive contrast are mainly iodinated agents. Previously, it was barium sulfate also, but it is obscured nowadays. And negative contrast agents examples are air, carbon dioxide, and milk, which attenuates less X-rays when compared to other body tissues. What I know, the indication for negative contrast agents is with barium sulfate. We used to give carbon dioxide for in double contrast barium studies in to study colonic pathologies. Other than that, even I have a doubt, sir, regarding negative contrast agents where we use.
No, air is used in the upper end also. If you want to do an enteroclysis, for example, which is a small bowel study, yes, you can use either barium or a water-soluble medium and inject air as a double contrast.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And dosing of contrast is mainly based on weight of the patient. However, the standard dose can be considered as 120 ml to 150 ml at a rate of which will be injected at a rate of 2 to 4 ml per second. In aortic dissection and aneurysms, pre-contrast images are useful to localize intramural hematoma or impending rupture, as the fresh blood will be having higher Hounsfield units, positive Hounsfield units. And in oral contrast, the dosage is we have to give 3% 2 to 3% iodine along with 750 ml to 1000 ml of water. And the indications For the principle underlying the usage of oral contrast is it opacifies the mucosa of the intestine. So its main use is in studying gastrointestinal tract. So there are two commonly used oral contrast agents, that is barium sulfate and gastrografin. Barium sulfate is obscure nowadays because it is a water insoluble and is a heavy metal ion, which heavy metal contrast agent, which causes more adverse reactions. So the absolute contraindications for barium or bowel injury when there is a suspected bowel injury or fistula, or in an emergency setting where we can expect the opening of bowel.
Do you know why you shouldn't do this?
So that is what I have mentioned earlier, I think so. Like it is water insoluble and it is not absorbed from the GI tract, sir.
Yeah. So, but why would it be dangerous for you to have, say, barium leaking from a perforated bowel?
Not exactly, sir. I don't know, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else? Prashant?
Chemical peritonitis, sir.
Sorry. Yes. One of them is chemical peritonitis. The other one is that it is extremely sticky, so that it's almost impossible to wash it out or clean it out. As a contrast to gastrografin, which is water soluble, where even if it leaks, you can clean it up quickly. You can wash it out of an abdominal cavity, which is impossible with barium. And that is why you do not want to use it. Okay, go on.
Vanitha, you asked about the negative contrast agents.
Yes,
and Dr. Lakshman mentioned in enteroclysis along with the methyl cellulose and this when we use carbon dioxide or
yes,
water. And similarly for double contrast or CT colography, 3D
yes,
images of colon, you inject gas per rectum. So, and
yes,
that is used as a contrast.
yes, sir.
Okay, right.
Yes, sir. Thanks. And rectal contrast, the indications for rectal contrast is a suspected bowel perforation or suspected anastomotic leakage. And we usually give a positive contrast rectally, which is an iodine based. And the dosage is, it should be given with it 750 ml of water along with 50 ml of contrast. Non-enhanced, the indications for a non-enhanced CT and what the pathologies that we are expected to see in non-enhanced CT being calcifications or calculi, that is for seeing any ureteric calculi or renal calculi, and sometimes in CBD and gallstones, along with pancreatic and liver calcifications. And we can see the fatty tumors in non-enhanced CT, like in angiomyolipomas, retroperitoneal lipomas, or in adrenal adenomas. And we can see the fat stranding in non-enhanced CT that indicates inflammations like appendicitis or diverticulitis, etc.
All right, Vanitha, there's a comment from Dr. Sriram Bhatt. Microbarium sulfate is not sticky. So can you come in and tell us a little bit more about this? Dr. Sriram Bhatt, please. Are you there, Dr. Sriram Bhatt?
Sriram, you have to unmute.
Unmute and please tell us a little bit more about this microbarium sulfate. Okay, it doesn't seem to be there. So for some reason, technical issues. Okay, he's not able to do it. Perhaps you can put it in the chat box or something a little bit more about it so that we can all learn. I need to learn about it myself. So kindly put it in the chat box and I will read it out to all the audience if you can't talk about it. Continue, Vanitha.
Yes, sir. Phases of enhancement is termed as the time from the administration of IV contrast. The time to get images are termed as the phases of enhancement. In early arterial phase, after 15 to 20 seconds of administration of IV contrast, we can see the we can see the contrast agent in arteries. So the lesions that is related to arteries like arterial bleeding or aortic injuries or ruptures can be accurately appreciated in this phase. Late arterial or early portal venous phase is from 35 to 40 seconds after the IV administration, where we can see the lesions like hypervascular and hypervascular lesions related to the arterial blood supply, and the liver tumors like focal nodular hyperplasia or hepatic cellular carcinoma, etc., can be seen in this phase. Hepatic or portal venous phase is the time where we can see the hypoenhancing lesions like hepatic cysts or abscesses or most of the liver mets can be appreciated in this phase. Nephrogenic phase comprises the phase where the entire genitourinary system like kidneys and urinary system will be enhanced with the contrast, and the small renal cell carcinomas can be appreciated accurately in this phase. And the delayed phase is otherwise called as washout phase or equilibrium phase, is the phase where we can see by the time most of the contrast will be eliminated from most of the structures except in urinary and collecting tubules and kidneys, and except from the fibrotic structures. So in delayed phase, we can appreciate certain lesions like cholangiocarcinomas or fibrotic mets from the liver fibrotic mets from CA breast, and transitional cell carcinomas.
And hemangiomas, Vanita? Delayed phase?
Hemangiomas, no idea, sir. I thought it is in arterial, sir.
Arterial phase, it fills up quickly.
Yes,
and
sir.
there's a delayed washout as well on
Yeah.
the features of hemangiomas.
Yeah.
I'll stop you, pause you for a minute there. Vasant
Yes,
makes
sir.
the point that CT is good for diagnosing pancreatitis in early stages. That is true. And Vanita mentioned that non-contrast CT is good for fat stranding. She mentioned fat stranding, calcified tissues, and seeing fat inside tumors.
Inside.
So yeah, so pancreatitis is picked up because of the capacity of CT to pick up fat stranding in a non-enhanced phase. And Sriram Bhatt says, microcrystallized, this is about the microbarium. Microcrystallized barium sulfate, which is specially manufactured. Initially, it is used in pediatric cases, but now all barium studies are done through microbarium. And so it's probably make the point, that, okay, he's unmuted now. Very good. If you can you please come in and say a few things, Sriram? I'm told Sriram Bhatt is now unmuted. Is that true? All right, maybe not. So anyway, he makes a point that all the barium that is now available is microbarium. I still don't know whether it means that one can use it even if there is a risk of a leak into the peritoneal cavity. That is something which he can perhaps write and tell us if he can't talk. Please continue, Vanita.
Yes, sir. The adverse reactions to the contrast agents is divided into acute and delayed. Acute adverse reactions are seen within 1 hour of administering IV contrast, which can be a mild like nausea, vomiting, rash, or pain on injection, to ranges to severe anaphylactic reactions including bronchospasm, protractus, urticaria, etc. And the delayed adverse reactions are expected within 1 hour to 1 week of administration of IV contrast. Most of the signs and symptoms will be severe to acute reactions. Where, one important delayed adverse reaction is contrast-induced nephropathy, where we can see the increase in baseline creatinine by greater than 25% within 3 days of receiving contrast. Even though it is a reversible adverse reaction, it prolongs the patient's hospital stay and patient might need dialysis sometimes.
All right, just one sec. Sriram Bhatt seems to be unmuted now. Can I bring you in on this microbarium again, please? Sriram? Okay, I think there's still a problem because even though he's unmuted, we can't hear, but he goes on to say, leak risk is the same, chemical peritonitis are the same, and there can be a possible obstruction by barium. So in essence, it remains very clear that if there's a suspected perforation of the GI tract, please do not use barium, regular or micro, but use a water-soluble medium like gastrografin. Ravi Shankar goes on to say about CT being preferable in 5 to 7 days to look at necrosis. Yeah, that's right. That is true. But we were talking about plain CTs here. That's right. Okay. Go on, Anita, please. Yeah.
And the management of adverse reactions, as the acute reactions can vary from mild to severe, mild adverse reactions are self-limiting and supportive measures will be enough to manage the patient. Whereas in severe anaphylactic reactions, we have to manage the patient aggressively with oxygen around 6 to 10 liters and with beta-2 agonists like terbutaline, albuterol, multi-dose inhalers, and with IM epinephrine, 1:1000 ml concentration should be given, 0.5 ml in thigh. And it also includes corticosteroids and nebulizers, beta-2 agonist nebulizers. And delayed adverse reactions will be managed, can be managed with oral fluids only if it is severe, it is mild as in acute reactions. But if in case of contrast-induced nephropathy, we have to manage the patient with IV fluids, preferably 0.9% saline, 12 hours, starting 12 hours before, if possible. If we know that a patient had previously contrast-induced nephropathy, then we have to start the patient 12 hours before the scan with IV fluids, and we have to hydrate the patient properly. And even we have to continue the hydration after the scan based on his general condition. And N-acetylcysteine should be given in high-risk patients around 600 mg BD 3 days before and 1 day after the CT administration of contrast. And if creat at 48 hours is increased greater than 25% of the baseline value, we have to follow the above mentioned measures, and we have to recheck the creatinine level at 5 days and 10 days after injection of contrast. Image interpretation is based on the understanding that tissues absorbs X-rays differently based on their density. So what we are measuring here is linear attenuation of X-rays by various density of tissues. So dense structures like bone will absorb more X-rays and will allow only small amount of X-rays to pass through the body, which will be picked up by the detectors, so that it will appear hyperdense or white on CT scan, and the less dense structures like air or fat will appear black, which on the CT scan, and they are called as hypodense structures. And the main disadvantage of conventional CT is that dense structures obscures or attenuates less dense structures, and there is a superimposition of images. This has overcome by the modern CT by the position of X-ray tubes and detectors at 180 degrees from each other, and the movements of both the X-ray tubes and detectors by 360 degrees around the patient, so as to increase the resolution of the images. A scout film is a preliminary film taken before the proper CT, which will be helpful in planning the level of CT. And axial, as I mentioned earlier, it is a transverse cross-sectional imaging which will be perpendicular to the longitudinal axis of the body. And in coronal section, the slices will be taken from ventral to dorsal direction, from the belly to back. In sagittal views, slices will be taken through a vertical plane, that will be vertical plane from the midline, so as we can see that sideways. We can see the slices from sideways. The expected pathologies that can be seen in CT images includes a contusion, which will appear like a ill-defined patchy low attenuation areas in contrast enhanced parenchyma, subcapsular hematomas like in solid organs like liver or spleen will be seen like a crescentic or elliptical densities that compress the dense underlying parenchyma. And acute hemorrhages will be having a positive Hounsfield units of around 30 to 45 Hounsfield units, so that we can appreciate early in unenhanced images. Whereas clotted blood will be having a Hounsfield of 60 units. And contrast images, we can see the contrast as isodense to the blood vessels. Abscesses will be seen as a peripherally peripherally enhancing lesions containing central low density lesions. So abscesses may be appear as a solid, or otherwise it can be containing gas. And calculi will be seen as a hypertense structures, whereas most of the renal calculi will appear as hypertense, whereas some of the gallstones can be hypertense to hypertense. So in gallstones, the most sensitive method is ultrasound than CT.
Janani, why would abscesses have gas in it? Are you there? Janani, can you unmute yourself, please? All right. She's not responding. Hari?
Sir?
Why would abscesses have gas in it? May appear as solid or contain gas, Vanitha says.
Bacterial reactions like
gas producing organisms is a simple answer. All right, go on, Vanitha.
And these are some pictures which I am showing. It is a pulmonary lacerations. First picture shows the pulmonary lacerations, and the second picture shows the subcapsular hematomas in a liver.
Yeah. You can run through these pictures, Vanitha, because this is just representative, and we'll have another session on reading CTs later. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Here the first picture shows the gallstones, and the second picture shows the liver abscess.
Ravi Shankar asks, why is ultrasound better at picking up gallstones compared to CTs?
Because gallstones, some gallstones are hypodenser, like pigment stones.
Yeah, that's right. They need, see, CT depends on their calcium content.
Yes, sir.
Many gallstones may not have calcium in it. Nevertheless, when they are translucent, as it were, there's a post-acoustic shadow with ultrasound, and that's why it's sometimes picked up better. Yeah, go on.
So, in acute setting, when we are reading a CT, especially in a patient with acute setting, we have to see for life-threatening injuries first, like a hemoperitoneum, large pneumothorax or tension pneumothorax, pneumoperitoneum, etc. should be sought first. And the initial assessment. After the initial assessment, we have to do the systemic interrogation to see for injuries of different organs, body organs. And to perform a complete evaluation, we have to scrutinize the CT scan with at least 3 window settings. For example, soft tissues, lung and bone settings.
One point that has to be made very clear to all residents and young surgeons, only hemodynamically stable patients have to be sent for CT. Transfer, doing the process of CT and transfer back to the ward or ICU or wherever takes a long time. And there have been instances of patients losing their lives in the CT bay because we have missed a life-threatening hemorrhage, for example. And so please remember, do not ask for CTs unless and until you're sure that the patient is hemodynamically stable. Please carry on, Vanitha.
And the systemic review will be in a pattern of every organ and every slice approach, that we have to focus a single organ at a time. And the key in the interpreting CT scan is to recognize abnormal densities on backdrop of normal images. And in lung windows, what we expected to see is an abnormalities in, along with abnormalities in lung parenchyma. We have to see for accumulations of air, as in pneumothorax or pneumomediastinum, etc. Whereas in bone windows, we have to see for bony lesions and any other abnormal calcifications and fractures. And in abdominal or mediastinal windows, we have to see for abnormalities in soft tissues, vessels, or injuries to vessels or viscera and solid organs. Clinical applications. We have to know the anatomy first for the proper interpretation of CT scan. So that's why I have included certain CT images at different levels of the body. So I would volunteer residents to take, sir.
All right, so, good. Call out somebody whom you know.
I'll call Hari first, sir.
Hari, go on. Hari.
Yes, sir.
There are, you can see the numbers on those structures. You want to have a go at what they are?
Yes, sir.
What is number 1?
Sure, sir.
It's got air in it, yeah. Upper chest. Huh?
Sorry.
What structure has air in it? You know, she said it's Hounslow unit of 0, whatever. Black. Yes, what is it? What has air in the midline, in the upper chest? You know, keep working at it. Yeah. It's very simple.
Trachea,
okay, what trachea? Yeah. Why are you hesitant to say that? What is number 7? It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. I can also make a mistake. That's not an issue. Number 7, man, in the front, it's bone.
He said, sir.
Sternum, sir. I'm not sure.
Sternum, you said. I heard it as duodenum, and that's why I'm sorry. If you said sternum, I'm sorry. What is number 6? Is it on the right, lower right side?
Yes, sir.
Correct, scapula, man. Number 2 is behind the trachea. What is it?
Esophagus.
Correct. What is number 4? Which is to the right of trachea?
Left common carotid.
Common carotid in the upper chest. Beats me a little bit.
Sorry, sir.
Carotid is above the level of the sternum, right, man?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Vanita.
Arch of aorta or descending arch of aorta?
Correct.
Descending aorta.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Descending comes. See, okay, let me first get the air orientation for you. When you see a CT,
yes, sir.
Where are you standing? At the foot end of the bed or the head end of the bed?
Foot end of the bed.
Foot end of the bed. So if something is there on that side, what should it be? Aorta.
Aorta, sir.
What part of aorta it is?
It is the descending part.
Correct. Okay.
Yes.
And what is number 5? Is it? Yeah, it's a little difficult to see. Yeah. What is number 5? Vanita.
The rib, sir. It is first rib.
No, number 5 is ribbalama. It's a soft tissue which is behind and medial to the aorta. Unless I don't see the.
That is number 4, sir.
4. Okay. What is number 4 then? Yeah.
Internal jugular means left. Correct. Internal jugular.
Correct. Okay. So what I would urge students to do is to work it out slowly, and not get flummoxed when somebody puts something like this, even in the exams. Just slowly work it out. Give it a little time and you can use logic to find out what it is. Next slide, Vanita.
Sir, I'll ask Prashant sir to take
All right.
Slide,
okay.
Sir, I'm not able to identify the numbers only, actually.
Oh, I don't agree. I am also struggling a bit, but it's not that bad. Number 7, you can see, no?
Vanita can point out with pointer.
Yeah, you can point out and then say what number it is, you can ask them.
Yes, sir.
Use the pointer and show them, show them what it is. The structure, show them the structure, let them say what it is. Sir. It's now, you can't escape, Prashant.
Yes, sir. I can see.
Come on.
All right. No, don't change, Vanita.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Don't press anything. Take the pointer only there. Yeah.
Because I'm
lower end of sternum, sir.
Okay. Agreed.
For 1, sir.
1.
Quickly, let's not take too much time.
IVC?
Sir. It is at the chest level, sir.
It's a
Trachea?
chamber of the heart, man.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Atrium.
Vanita, quickly.
Right atrium, sir.
Yeah, okay. Quickly, give the answers
Number-
if they don't answer. Yeah. Show
Number
them
3
the-
is, yes, sir.
Ah.
This pointer, I'm not able to move, sir.
Show the arrow.
You can actually use a pointer
number.
on your PPT
yes.
also.
Yes, sir. Number
Okay.
3 is left ventricle, sir.
Yeah,
Number 2 is superior vena cava.
yeah.
And
Please
number,
remember, you're looking at it from the foot end of the bed. Okay, always in cities. Yeah.
yes, sir. Number 5 is pulmonary vein, sir.
Yes.
Number 4 is pulmonary descending
What?
aorta.
Yeah.
No. Number 6
No, it's
is
not descending
descending.
aorta. Six is
Yes,
descending
number 6 is
aorta. Number
descending
4
aorta.
must be something in the hilum. Same as pulmonary vein on the other side. Anybody else?
Yes,
I
sir.
can't say what it is myself. Anybody else to volunteer what it is?
Pulmonary artery.
Artery?
Pulmonary,
Maybe.
yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Next one.
And this is a coronal section of CT, sir.
Yeah.
Showing number 1 is aorta, sir.
Arch of the aorta. Yeah.
Arch of the aorta,
Yeah.
which is number 2 is superior vena cava.
Yes.
And number 3 is arch of the aorta dividing into right common carotid, sir.
Yeah.
And number 6 is left common carotid.
Yeah.
And number 4 is left jugular vein, sir. And number 9 and 10s are common carotid, sir.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Agree.
And number 5 is subclavian artery, sir.
Yeah.
And number 7 is left ventricle, and number 6 is right atrium, sir.
Right atrium. Yeah. Okay. Next one.
And this is the axial CT of upper abdomen level, sir.
All right.
Number-
Involve somebody else. Let's see our
Sal-
new groom. All right. Ajit, come on, man. Have a go.
So number 1, this is
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go on, Ajit. Tell me what number 1 is. Yeah.
One is liver, sir.
Okay.
One. Then two.
Number 2.
Two. I can't see, sir. Here. Okay.
Big structure, man.
Spleen.
Spleen. Agreed.
Okay. Then
Number
number 3 is where? Okay. Portal vein.
Oi.
Gallbladder.
Gallbladder.
Gallbladder. Gallbladder. sir.
Gallbladder. Okay. Number 4.
Pancreas.
All right.
Yes, sir.
5. Stomach. 6.
Aorta, sir.
Aorta.
7. CBD.
No.
Ureter, sir. No. Liver level.
Honestly, I'm not sure myself. What is it, Vanita?
adrenal gland, sir. Right adrenal. It will be
right.
shape
Above
of
that,
inverted
yeah.
one.
Fair enough. Agreed. Yeah. Okay.
Number 8, sir.
Go on, Vanita.
Number 8 is IVC, sir.
IVC.
Yeah. To the other side. That is the aorta
Yes, sir.
there and yeah, to the left.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Number 9 is a splenic fracture of transverse colon, sir.
Right. Okay.
And the next pick, sir. Saurav, sir.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Number 1 is liver.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the spleen.
Yeah.
Where is number 3? I can't see. Okay. Sir, this is the kidney, sir.
Yeah. Which side?
Sir, this is a left-sided kidney, sir.
Left.
Right
I wanted
side.
you to
Right side
fall
kidney.
for it. You fell for it. Yeah. Okay.
Right side kidney.
Okay. Okay.
4 is left-sided kidney.
Yes.
5 looks like the pancreas, sir.
Yes, it is. 6 is
6
aorta.
is the aorta. 7 is vena cava.
Yeah.
And 8 is it looks like the colon, sir.
Stomach.
Or stomach. Maybe.
Stomach.
Yes, sir.
9 is?
So, So it's some artery, sir. I can't.
What would it be? What would come? Yeah, what would come from the front of the aorta? I was going to ask.
So either the celiac trunk or the superior.
It has to be the celiac.
Celiac trunk.
Yeah, because if it's SMA,
yes, sir.
It will be below the pancreas. You won't have so much of pancreas seen if it's SMA.
Yes.
Okay. SMA comes in the lower border of the pancreas. Yeah. Okay. Next one.
This one, Janani, sir.
Janani.
Janani, Janmabhoomi,
Okay.
Sir, number 1. Sir, can I start with 2, sir?
You two start with whatever you want. Yeah.
Yes, sir. 2 will be the right kidney, sir.
Yes.
Kidney. Then 6 is pancreas, sir. 4, I'm not very sure, sir.
IVC. To the right of aorta, ma?
Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
That is IVC. 4 is IVC. 5 is aorta.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Then 6 is pancreas.
Yeah.
7, I'm not sure, sir.
What is it, Vanita?
Small bowel, sir.
Sorry?
Small bowel, sir. Loops of small bowel.
Loops of
contrast.
small bowel. Yeah. Contrast enhanced. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That must be large bowel, sir.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
Yes, sir. 9
So is 9.
Yes, sir.
So is 9. Yeah. Okay. 1 is liver, ma?
Liver.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, next one, Munishekar, sir.
All right.
So this is at the level of pelvis, sir.
Yeah. What is 3, Muni?
Numbers not visible clearly, sir.
Okay. He's showing you doing the pointer, no?
Sir, iliac bone.
Iliac bone.
Iliac bone, sir.
Okay. Put the pointer, Vanita. Yeah. What is? Yeah.
What is
number?
2? 2.
Yeah.
2 is vertebra.
Vertebra. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Actually, 2 is pointing to these
Ureter.
two.
Oh, those two structures. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Ureter.
Sorry, sir. With
Okay. Yeah, correct. I also missed it. Okay.
I think they are
Ureter. Yeah.
This OS major.
Okay.
Bowel, sir.
All right.
Where is 4, Vanita? 4?
4 is here, sir.
Okay, rectus.
Above.
Rectus.
This is the rectus. Okay.
10 is bowel. Fallopian tube, sir.
A fallopian tube.
10.
Bowel, sigmoid colon.
Bowel. It's bowel. It is bowel. Yeah. 5, 6, 7 are layers of the abdominal wall.
Abdominal wall.
All right. Okay, Vanita. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good that you woke people up. We'll skip this. Okay. It's getting on in time because I need to invite comments from people.
Yes.
Can we skip these things? And how many more do you have? I forget. I know you had sent it to me earlier. Skip these.
Yes, sir.
Skip these for now. I think you've done a good job.
Yes, sir.
I really think we should. We should. Can I now invite comments from the teachers in the group? 1 about the content and 2 about the presentation itself. Ravi.
I think, Vanita, you did a good job.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know whether you are actually reading, but your presentation was quite fluent and it was flowing well. And you covered all the important points. I think it's a good presentation in all.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think it was quite informative. I think I also learned a lot of things. Very good. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank
Shivram?
Vanita,
you. Yes, sir.
as usual, you have done a good job.
Thank you,
Certain
sir.
things you didn't cover.
Yes, sir.
The one is reconstruction of the CT scan.
Yes, sir.
These are all important for surgeons.
Yes, sir.
Other thing is about windows. There are different
Yes, sir.
windows we read
Yes, sir.
for the different structures to think. These are the 2 things which I think should have covered. Other
Yes, sir.
thing I told about the radiation, about the
Dose.
CT. See, when it goes to 128 slice CT, I read about it that it's 6-fold radiation comes down. So that's another advantage you can say about the higher slice CT.
Yes,
Overall, good job. I think we could have involved one radiologist also to invited him. I think Dr. Lakshman next time.
Yes, good idea. We actually do that. We actually do that in our thing when there is a radiology subject. Yes, good idea.
Yeah.
Sriram?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
No, he cannot mute. There's a problem with his audio. So I cannot say that, but he says, good job, informative, problems and shortcomings. Yes, that is something we could have covered. I had mentioned about 3D reconstruction, but for some reason, it was a little late in the day. And so Vanitha couldn't read up, and she said she'll do it a little later, which is fine. When we have another session on actually reading the CT scans, then we can have a session on the windows and reconstruction as well. I think that's a good idea. But overall, congratulations, Vanitha. I think you did a good job. I would say that you could make it a little more lively. Okay, you were reading the slides, but I think with practice, you will get out of it. Slide will give you a cue and you have to talk for yourself. And the tone can be a little more lively. It sounded a little soporific. What is soporific? What is soporific? No, I don't mean it as a negative comment, but it was a little monotonous and it can put people to sleep. So the tone and the kind of bring some life into your presentation. All this comes with practice. It doesn't happen overnight, but altogether an excellent job. I congratulate you on it, and I thank all the participants for participating so well in such a disciplined manner. There was absolutely no interruption whatsoever. People put their hands up and things like that. Ravi, you want to say something? Is your hand up?
The current, as just an extension of Dr. Shivaram's point, the current 128 slice CT will be equivalent to 1 or 2 chest X-rays, and the previous, just to put it in context, the previous CTs used to be 5 to 6 chest X-rays.
All right.
The amount of radiation.
All right. Very nice. So altogether, a very good 1 hour spent. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. And here is wishing you a good night.
Thank you.
We will end the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Good night, sir.